Hello, so this is a tutorial / demonstration about FastAPI testing. FastAPI testing, and one of the things which we just need to look at first is the tests on the FastAPI site use something called x-auth-token. The user has to supply username password for the first time, and then the server returns an access token in the header field x-auth-token. Further sessions, this token is exchanged rather than the username password. So this is going to be a demonstration of using TestClient. TestClient, which we can see, will be the key feature of this. You're using TestClient, so import TestClient, create a TestClient by passing your FastAPI application to it, create functions with a name that starts with test underscore, just like you would with any normal Pytest test. Use a TestClient object same way as you would with requests. So where you would use requests.get, we're now using client.get. You see this bit down here. I'll just zoom in a little bit, make that easier to read. There we go. So from FastAPI, import FastAPI client. So this is actually the minimum. If you want to test this is on FastAPI site. You can just copy that and paste it into your IDE and run it. Assuming you've got FastAPI installed, pip install FastAPI. App equals FastAPI. So all this code down here is that's your API with your root. So these 4 lines are your test. Typically, these 4 lines would actually appear in a separate file, and the file would be called test underscore, and then whatever you want to call it. Here we're using test underscore, as just mentioned, followed by read underscore main, and that matches with the name of the function which your root. In here it's just the / root, but say for instance it was v1/read main, then you'd still be using you'd be calling this function, and it would return message as the key and hello world as the value. So def test underscore read underscore main. So this is the most basic Pytest test you would get. Response equals client.get and then /. So if you go to that URL, so my website / would just return response 200 and the JSON, response.json message hello world. I'm going to demonstrate this in a second, so we'll get to that. Notice that the testing functions are normal def, not async def. So you want to just run this straight through, and the calls to the client are also normal calls, not using await. This allows you to use Pytest directly without complications. Separating tests. In a real application, you probably would have your tests in a different file, and your FastAPI application might also be composed of several files, modules, etc. So let's say you have a main file, main.py, with your FastAPI app. So that's just your app. The testing file you'd split out and make that separate. So in your test underscore main.py file, which gets called by Pytest, you'd have your test underscore read main in here. So same 4 lines. And what they do is this here does client.get on that route. And here you just put client equals test client. So if you remember, just back up here, using test client, so you have to import test client. And when you import test client, put in your app name. So if your app was called foobar, you'd do from main import foobar, and then you put foobar in there. And then client.get, just like you would do with requests.get. You can also do post requests as well, just like you can with request.get, request.post. And you do client.get and client.post. Here is just made a fake token, and really that's just to just so that you can include the an HTTP exception when the token header is invalid. So it's just a real world example of a test. Fake DB, so yeah, it's just, again, because this is just a copy and paste example, you wouldn't want to set up a full database and all that, so it's just, that's pretending to be the database, and then fake underscore DB, so you return the item that you've asked for. Response model, that's an object, that is a object which comes with FastAPI. And then all you want to do is, if you're asking for item 3, so these curly braces just mean whatever's passed after items, treat it as a variable. And yeah, then that ID, say the item ID is 7, so then 7 goes in, is used here within your item. So response model equals item where the ID is 7. So then your response model object is what you can then handle. Response model equals item. So then, yeah, you return fake DB with your item ID if the item is in the fake DB. Hope that makes sense. So you're passing in your response model. You could then update test underscore main with the extended tests. So then you could put in, yeah, so actually put in a value such as foo with the correct header. And here you're checking for response 200, and you're expecting to get these 3 key value pairs in your response. Again, just this, you test for a positive, a true result, and then you test for a false result. So here, what you're doing is you're checking that you get an error 400. You basically check, here you want an error, you're testing for a failure. So it's all here, it's all on Tiangolo, fastapi.tiangolo.com. And let's just go over to a demo. So I've put this code in my VS Code. Let's just move this across if I can grab it. So this is an example where the code was split out. You've got your test code inside your tests directory, and you've got your main.py inside your app directory if you want to see what the structure looks like. Yeah, it's a bit cluttered there, isn't it? But you've got app, so your main lives inside app there. Sorry, it lives inside this app. You've got main here, and then you've got tests, which lives there. So main, test main. I did all this using Poetry originally, so you don't need to do that if you don't want to. Because I'm using Python 3.8.10, because Poetry defaulted to 3.8.10, I had to add in this line. With FastAPI documentation, they provide the code for 3.10 and pre 3.10, I believe. So yeah, 3.6 and above, 3.10 and above. So you see the difference. I think the only difference is the from typing import union. If you've not come across union before, it's basically a way to say that a variable could be an int or it could be a float. So you just do that kind of the pipe. Union, there you're saying description could either be a string or it could be none. Okay, so let's run this. So what we've got is code that you've just seen on the It's showing an error there. I think it still works though, so let's roll with it. Testing, so clicking on the little, I call it a test tube, I don't know whether it is or not. And it's already run, so let's just run it again from scratch. You get all the little spinny disks. The one thing to watch out for when you're setting this up is make sure that you've got your path set correctly. So here you need to do the name of the directory above it. So because test is in a subdirectory, effectively, I always think of it, let's just zoom in on that. I always think of it really, if you were looking at it in a folder structure or a directory structure, it'd actually be a /. So what you're doing is you're going up one level to come back down into a different directory. So that is, in a nutshell, that is it. That is how to test. So the important things to remember are, when you write your functions in your FastAPI, you use async because you want them to run asynchronously. You don't want everything to stop while you're making these requests. And on your tests, so remember you don't use async on your test. And yeah, say the headers bit is just kind of a bit of a, it's just added that in to fill it out, make it look a bit, make it a bit more real world. So again, with your tests, you want to test whether something works, and then you want to test for a case. You want to put in a bad case, and then you want your test to return true when you've checked the bad case. Basically saying this shouldn't work. Check that it doesn't work. If it doesn't work, then true. You don't just test for where things work. You test for where things you expect things not to work. Whilst on the subject of Pytest, just a few other little bits and pieces that, let's just make a new text file. There's a couple of other things to consider with Pytest. Is, or are, parameterize. I've done a video on parameterize already. Oh, what the hell was that? 2, look at mark. You can mark, this autocomplete is annoying, isn't it? It really doesn't. Let me, because it thinks it's a Python file. Text.txt. Okay, is it going to behave now? Let's see. Mark. And the other thing to start learning is probably fixtures. What else? Capsys. That captures standard output, and if you had a print statement in your code, Pytest would not be able to verify it. If you use Capsys, you gather the standard output, and then with using Capsys, and then you can do an assert. Parameterize, fixtures, mark, Capsys. There was one other thing which I was going to put on here, but I've forgotten. Oh, mock and patch. Yeah, so if you are starting to learn Pytest or even unit testing in general, these, I don't know unit tests so well, but these principles, there will be equivalents. With Pytest, you don't have to create a class, whereas with unit tests you do. Some of you may prefer that, some may not. And one last thing, again, I'm not promoting books. I don't get any kickback, but just in cases of a use, let's have a look at this book. And let's go to page 1. Python testing with Pytest 2nd edition. It uses an example project all the way through, so you probably do need to start at the bottom, at the top, sorry, at the beginning. So I'm looking, I was saying top and bottom because I was thinking of scrolling to the top and bottom of this file. Yeah, how the semantics change, really in the old days you would say the beginning of a book or the end of a book. Now you say the top or the bottom because the top is the top of the document if it's in a PDF. Why Pytest? Simple tests are simple to write in Pytest. Complex tests are still simple to write. Tests are easy to read. You can get started in seconds. Use assert. Learn Pytest while testing a sample application. So this book uses a project called cards, and throughout the book it refers back and basically does some tests on that project. Yeah, so Python, pip, command line, it's really starting at the beginning, but it does, even if you are familiar with Python or intermediate, it's still, let's just look at cards project if it will take us there. No, it won't. That's odd. I thought it was a link. Never mind. The examples in this book were written and tested using Python 3.7 plus, including 3.10. So it's still quite recent. Footnotes. There's some good notes here. Good links. testingcode.com. Where can I go there, please? I've not actually looked at this. Developing software of automated tests. Learn to code through game development, running your own site for fun and absolutely no profit whatsoever. Testing PyPy, it's fast compliant alternative implementation of Python. Attribute ATRs and data classes. Python's rich, textual, and textualize. Teaching web development, including front-end testing. This is one of the good things about electronic books, PDFs, Kindle, so on. If you're reading it as a normal book, you probably just would not bother to visit the link, but when the links are handed to you on a plate, you can go and visit them. So, yeah, there we go. I know this has been a 2-part video, so I always like to kind of throw in the sort of tutorial bit at the start and then just a bit of my, I just like to share stuff, really, share things that I've learned and hopefully spark some comments. And then if people got some better ideas, which hopefully they have, they can add some comments and yeah, get the conversation started. So testandcode.com if you're interested in testing. I know it's a full-time job and sometimes it can be a pain in the neck, so yeah, there we go. Even if testing's not your bag, I think it's still you need to know about it to get past a job interview, and then obviously depending on what kind of job you're going for, the company may have its own testers. Once you start talking about coverage and 100% coverage, then you probably start to glaze over, or you may or may not, as that depends on the individual. So yeah, FastAPI testing. So run it, which I did. This documentation is amazing. It's just the best documented site I've ever seen. Pip install Pytest, then run Pytest, and oh yeah, I didn't show you the command line. When you're testing in the command line, you do need to be in the right directory. So where is tests? Yeah, you need to be in the ideally you need to be in the directory above your tests folder if you have a separate test folder. There we go, 6 passed. So yeah, I think just for your own confidence, just copy Tiangolo's code, run it, and then you can modify it. Sometimes it's better to take something that's already working and then modify it, break it, fix it, rather than try and write something from scratch, and then you don't really know what you're doing anyway. So take something that works, modify it, break it, fix it. That's my tip of the day. So yeah, on that note, I'm going to ride off into the sunset, and I'll be back soon. So please comment as well. I know people always banging on about subscribing, thumbs up and all that. Just yeah, any comments? All good. Thank you.